Hello and welcome back to session 5. I really hope you had an opportunity to practice your first induction. Now we're going to look at that first induction and call it the priming induction because we're just using the same steps as our priming sequence and using it again, the exact same thing, in our induction sequence. Now before we get into unconscious moments, which is going to be quite lengthy as a process, we've only covered the P. We've only covered the priming sequence. Then we've skipped the hypnotic interview just for now, and we've just given you an example of the I, which is the hypnotic induction. We've just given an example so you can get a feeling for what this is going to be about for you, when you can get a feeling or an understanding of what it feels like to put someone in hypnosis for the first time. So I really hope you had the opportunity to practice that with someone. If not, hopefully you took the time to just practice that routine in your mind. Then when we look at the other inductions later, you know exactly where that'll fit inside the FITR formula. So where does the unconscious moments or hypnotic cues come into place with the FITR formula? Well, basically the whole thing. In order to know your client's in trance, we need to see or hear certain things that they'll either tell us or we'll see formally that lets us know that everything we're doing, from the priming sequence to the hypnotic interview, to the induction we're going to do, even to the therapy and even to the testing, we need to see or hear these unconscious moments happen. These are just hypnotic phenomena to let us know that everything we're doing right at that stage is either working or has worked. What tends to happen is a lot of assumption goes into hypnosis that we think that if we just do the hypnotic routine we've been shown, that it'll work. That because we've said certain words, or we've been told to say a certain sequence, or we've been told to say a certain monologue or a technique itself, or a certain ailment our client's having, that all we have to do is just follow those steps and it'll work every time. This is far from the truth. Again, I want to take out assumptions. I don't want to be assuming my client's in trance and hoping they are, and then all of a sudden getting to the end of an hour routine that I've put into place and realize nothing's happened. I need to look for these clues along the way that lets me know without a shadow of a doubt that everything I'm doing right now is working. And if I'm not seeing these unconscious moments, it means it's not working. I want to keep it as simple as that. If I see the unconscious moments or hear them, I know what I'm doing right now, what I'm saying, or the process I'm using, or even the therapy that I'm using is working. If I'm not seeing the unconscious moments as a result of what I'm doing, saying, or using as a therapeutic tool, I know I need to be flexible and do something else until I start to notice those moments. I really want you to backtrack over what I just said right then and listen to it a couple of times. Unconscious moments with conversational hypnosis, just in this formula, is crucial to your success. We need to make sure that we're not assuming our client's in trance just because our technique says so, just because we've been told we have to do step 1 all the way through to step 5 and that's all we need to do. Hypnosis is not like that. So what is an unconscious moment? The unconscious moment is a clue from the unconscious mind that what we're doing is having an effect. Now, this should highlight a few things for us. If we used our priming sequence to get attention, and then we needed to use a technique to bypass the conscious mind. Remember, in the priming sequence, we had the overload of information. We used our EVP, which is conducive to hypnosis, and we threw in a couple little things that allowed us to use our priming sequence as part of our induction. Remember, we skipped the hypnotic interview. As part of our hypnotic induction, we should have already started to see a couple of things happening that lets us know the intention of our priming has worked. If you listen back and I said, well, if we see Joe sitting in front of us and we start telling Joe about the goods about hypnosis, what he'll feel, what he'll notice, what he should expect, and we see Joe starting to smile and nod along like he's getting involved, this is letting me know that unconsciously something's starting to happen. And these are the unconscious moments I'm looking out for. Now, when I was a treating hypnotherapist, the unconscious moments was where I put a lot of my attention on. If I'm seeing an unconscious moment, I keep going with what I'm doing. If I don't see it, I'm not just going to go to the end of my routine and hopefully it comes out at the end perfectly. I'm going to stop mid-track or even mid-sentence, mid-story and try something else until I find these unconscious moments. I want you to be on the hunt for unconscious moments. So let's look at what an unconscious moment, the two categories of unconscious moments. One is a visual clue and one is an auditory clue. Okay? The visual clues will tend to happen more without your client noticing. Now, when we come to listening the auditorial clues, this will come as a part of the hypnotic interview. So it has categories in both. When we get to hypnotic interview, we'll discuss more about how that all comes together. So classically, this is known as hypnotic cues. This just lets you know that your client is in trance or the therapy is working, it's having some sort of effect. So let's look at the first couple of visual clues we should start to see. Now, this is not a list in apparency. This is not a list to say that these happen more than the other. This is just a formal list I've put together to give you as many classical indications that your client is where they need to be hypnotherapy. So the first one is rapid eye blinking, or the rate is either going to increase or decrease, and this is your blink reflex. Your clients will either blink a lot, or the blinking will slow down so much that it seems as if they're taking a long time to blink from one to the next. This is outside of the ordinary. Now, you might be sitting there thinking, well, I don't know how much I blink automatically right now. It really doesn't matter. You're going to notice certain things, especially tending when your clients start to increase their blinking. It's out of the ordinary. So this is your first clue. The next clue is eye fixation. Again, this can be increased attention on you, almost like your client can't keep their eyes off you. This is a great thing when we look at eye contact later. Or there'll be lack of attention. As an example, they're looking around the room and they're not facing their attention on you and almost not ignoring what you're saying, but not really paying attention to. Or it's not that they're looking around the room, their attention could be elsewhere, but it could be stuck on an adamant object. It could be the corner of a desk, it could be at the floor, it could be at your shoes as a hypnotist, they could be looking over your shoulder. As long as there's attention somewhere. Now, if there's lack of attention and they're looking around and they're fidgeting, we need to try and get that attention back. So you're either going to find your client will sit there and look at you and they won't be able to take their eyes off you, so to speak, or their attention is going to be sub-focused on something else. It almost looks like they're daydreaming. This is eye fixation. This just means that you're getting a lot of attention. The next one is postural shifts. This is a shift in posture or position. Let's say they're sitting down, and let's say you're using a theme like, okay, Joe, so you'll start to feel relaxed and you can go into trance. You can start to drift off and notice your body starting to get heavy, the induction we're familiar with now. And you see Joe's shoulders start to drop, or his head moves to the side and starts to relax more, or he creates a loop in his midsection and starts to take his posture down. It starts to relax or sink into the chair. Any sort of postural shifts is the unconscious mind in action. It's the body adapting to the environment you're creating, which is therapeutic in nature, which is the hypnotic circumstance that you're putting Joe or your client in. So watch out for those postural shifts. Facial, either relaxed or tense facial features. Okay, could also be flushing of the skin or the lips or skin coloration. You might notice the face gets very red as blood starts to circumambulate around the head, or they could go very, very pale. Whatever you're starting to notice with facial, whether it could be the relaxed or the tense facial muscles, this could be like a client's thinking intently about what you're telling them, or they're confused about what you're telling them, or their face is so relaxed and so peaceful, it looks like they've got no bones, it just looks like skin. This is a great thing to let you know that unconsciously something's starting to happen. Now you might be thinking, well, what has this got to do with the unconscious mind? These are things that we don't normally control. They're outside of awareness. Do we think, how many times do I need to blink in a minute? Do we think, how do I screw up my face to show that I'm actually thinking about something? These are automatic gestures and automatic movements that we do that are in line with the unconscious mind. So what the unconscious mind works with is taking care of all those natural functions of the body so you don't have to think about doing them. The next one is automatic movement. Now, these could be things from twitching, catalepsy, which is a stiff limb, automatic movement, levitation of a hand or a finger or a limb, anything that is outside of awareness, anything that your client is not doing on purpose that happens as a result of whatever you're doing at that point. So the twitching, we've all felt twitching before. Catalepsy could be the arm getting really, really stiff and a client not doing it on purpose, but it's happening as a result of the circumstance that you're putting them in. Automatic movement. On very common occasions, you may find if your client's sitting on a chair using the armrest, you may start to notice that maybe one of the hands starts to lift by itself. This is the unconscious mind in action. Okay, this is the levitation of limbs. These are all things that happen as a result of the unconscious mind being stimulated. Remember, the A is the attention. We bypass the conscious mind through the technique we use. We look at one induction already, which is our first hypnotic technique. That's our induction to put them into trance. And we stimulate the unconscious mind by whatever we've done so far, which is the induction. It has to have some sort of result. So one of those results could be an arm starts to lift, or you'll see the postural change, or the eye fixation. If their eyes are closed, you might see that their eyes are starting to move around underneath the eyelids, like there's some processing going on. These are all results that lets me know that the induction or the priming that I've done has worked. If I've done the induction we looked at before, which is just including the trance themes and the power words, exactly the same we did with the priming induction, the priming sequence, this has become our priming induction. If I'm not seeing any of those unconscious moments or those unconscious clues, it lets me know the induction that I'm doing is not working. It just means basically my client's sitting there with his eyes closed or her eyes closed. If I'm not seeing an unconscious moment, it means that nothing has occurred. It means that nothing has worked and I need to try something else. Okay. The next one, which also fits into the auditory clues, is breathing. You may find that your client starts to breathe a lot more, or in most cases, more commonly, their breathing slows down and almost looks, if you look really carefully, you can hardly even see their chest moving up and down. It represents the breathing sensation because their breath is so shallow. Or you might find your client will sigh like a release of a breath or a release of energy. This is another unconscious moment. Now, the most common you'll see, and I want to draw your attention to this, is breathing and eye contact, or the eyes twitching. Something to do with the eyes and the breathing has something to do with those big unconscious moments, and they're going to be the most common and the easiest to see. Now, it does not matter if you see one, or in some cases, all of them happen at once. As long as you're seeing something, keep it simple. As long as you're seeing something, you are on the right track. Now, I do want to introduce you to the auditory clues. These happen more through discussion, being that we're conversational hypnotists. We haven't really involved our client in the discussion right now. We've just been talking at them. So when we get into the more conversational stuff, which is after the P, the prime, which we're doing right now, is just an extension of this. When we get into the hypnotic interview, it will cause us to have a conversation with our clients, and we'll be able to not just see the unconscious moments, we'll be able to hear the unconscious moments as well. So auditory clues come through expression. The expression of an issue, challenge, or addiction. And this usually comes with either a lot of pain when they're talking about their problem, like they're emotionally attached to the problem, or an excited tone or excited expression when they talk about the outcome of what they want from the session, as if they can see the light at the end of the tunnel. Also as well, when your client's expressing their problem, we look at the hypnotic interview, we'll show you how to do this. They tend to express their problem, especially at an unconscious level, knowing that all problems exist in the unconscious mind. That's why we need to bypass the conscious mind. All problems exist in the unconscious mind, but the unconscious mind has an uncanny way of expressing itself and talking about the problem. It doesn't tend to talk about it straight up front. It's not a linear thing. It's not conscious reality. It's why the conscious mind is great, but the unconscious mind is more creative. So it will tend to talk about the problem, the addiction, the issue or the challenge of what your client's having through use of metaphors, short stories. They'll talk about their feelings. They'll talk about how this affects them, what they're getting from it. They'll tend to talk about more internal representations rather than step-by-step formula, which is more conscious mind. So you need to pay attention to this. The next auditory clue is emotion. Any emotional outburst. It could be controllable emotion like some sobbing, to complete uncontrollable emotion, which is where your client cannot stop being upset. It's just a flood, a big flood of emotions. And this can happen in the negative and positive. Sometimes it can be quite uncanny that your client can be laughing as if they're having fun while they're talking about a painful problem. Your client could be having an uncontrollable burst of emotion and feeling a little bit of pain maybe, or expressing themselves through a lot of tears and emotion, but be okay with it. This is the uncanny nuance of the unconscious mind, that these two parallel dimensions, if you were, can happen at the same time. So emotions are very, very common in hypnosis, especially when you're talking about problems that are painful. Not so much painful as it hurts me, it's more of an internal hurt. The next one is language. It tends to come out as confusion. Sometimes when you ask certain questions to your client, especially in the hypnotic interview, they get so confused about how to answer you that almost like their inability to speak occurs. If you've ever talked to somebody and asked them a question and they start to reply with things like, well,